do I get more suction when I vacuum?
Well, that is a loaded question. If a system is plumbed properly, and let's just take an average pool. So average in the country. Our average here in the north is slightly bigger than in the south, but let's say an average pool, we'll call it a 18 by 36 rectangle pool or 16 by 32 rectangle pool. Most of those will have one skimmer and one main drain. Well, a pair of main drains, but one main drain suction line. If it's plumbed properly, you should have a fairly even distribution between suction out of the main drain, suction out of the skimmer. And if plumbed properly, should have two separate valves. A lot of older pools, they plumbed the main drain into the bottom of the skimmer and then one line back to the equipment pad. But let's assume this isn't a super old pool and we have one main drain and one skimmer valve. So in front of the pump, as you look at the pump where there's the basket that you clean out, there should be at least a pair of valves in front of that. One's for the skimmer, one's for the main drain. What you can do is you can turn one off and then go check in. If you don't know which is which, go and check and see, is the skimmer still working? If it is, then you know that the one that's still open is the skimmer. If it's not working anymore, then you know it's the main drain. And normally what happens when you're vacuuming a pool, in most systems, as long as we're not talking extremes here, you should be able to run the vacuum line into the skimmer and not touch the valves. You should be able to get enough suction out of it to be able to vacuum. If in that scenario you're not, what I would recommend is throttle the main drain valve down a little bit. You rarely want to turn it all the way off. And the reason you don't want to turn it all the way off is that now all of the suction is through the skimmer. And oftentimes what happens is the vacuum will get stuck to the bottom of the pool, which can damage the surface of the pool, could cause some other problems. So you always want there to be some suction from the main drain as well. Every system's going to be different. You're going to have to find a happy medium there. So that's the average scenario. Now there's all kinds of extremes. If you, on a pool where there's two skimmers and a main drain, but there's not two separate skimmer lines that come back, we see that all the time. There's one valve for main drain and one valve for skimmers, but there's two skimmers in the pool. You may have to put a rubber plug into one of the skimmers so that it only draws out of the other one, because if you don't do that and you put your vac hose into one skimmer, by default it'll draw more water out of the second skimmer anyway, because that's going to be the path of least resistance. Instead of the pump having to draw the water through a 40-foot hose, it's going to just draw it into that separate skimmer, so you may have to plug it. So those are a couple of the scenarios. The other thing could be, do you have some debris caught in the skimmer so that you're not getting proper flow? Could it be that you have a plugged skimmer and you need that line blown out? That could be a possibility as well. And that would typically be done from the pump, blowing back through the skimmer to try to evacuate any other problems that would be in the skimmer. Another possible problem would be, have you changed your sand? If you have a sand filter, which again, most pools have sand filters, and oftentimes if the sand has been in the filter for many years, you get all these layers built up in there, and maybe you don't notice it under normal circumstance, but as soon as you try to vacuum and draw and push enough water through that skimmer or through that the filter, you'll have some problems with getting enough suction and getting enough water flow through there. Another thing to check. You could check that by putting it, if you have a multi-port valve, you could put it on recirculate and try to vacuum that way. You're not cleaning anything because you're just drawing it out of the pool, putting it right back in, but you could see that would be a way of knowing if it's in fact the filter. Another possibility would be, is this in the pump, is the skimmer is the basket in the skimmer, is that full or is it impacted? Could clean that out. Or another thing would be in the pump itself. Of course, you don't want to check this with it running, but if you shut it off, if you pull the basket out, can you get your fingers down in there and up into the impeller and make sure that that's not plugged? A lot of times what happens is debris gets drawn right through the basket in the pump, and it plugs up the skimmer, or it plugs up the impeller in there, so you're not getting enough water flow through it. And that happens a lot when you're in an environment where you have a lot of cottonwood or trees like that are dropping a lot of debris in there that really they're small. It's small enough that it can like string through the strainer basket, but it can't get through that impeller that packs as well. So any one of those scenarios, there's a lot of possibilities as it could be, and it could be something as simple as a crack in a pipe. So you may also have, during normal operation, there's enough flow, but in that situation where you're increasing the need to draw through that pipe and you have a crack in a valve, crack in some of the plumbing, you might start drawing air in, which reduces your suction as well. So I threw a lot at you. That's 6 or 7 possible scenarios. Likely it's one of those or 1 or 2 of those in combination.
Does filtration have anything to do with it? Dirty filters?
Yeah, we talked about that.
You did, okay.
Yeah.
I missed.
Yeah, talked about the sand and